Welcome back, everyone. We're now going to enter the next session, which is the governance focus group. So I hand the floor to Natalia. Natalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can be heard.
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody, to the session on the governance focus group, where it will be our pleasure to share the respective approaches to governance of our pilots. Today, I will be joined by the excellent speakers, Belizar Shalamanov, representing ECHO, Arthur van der Wees of Concordia, and Thibaut Antignac from Sparta. And my name is Natalia Kadenko. I will be acting as a moderator and representing the governance approach of CyberSec for Europe. In short, our approach has a catchy title of checks and balances. Why checks? Well, working out on how we need to approach the governance in the future of cybersecurity in Europe, we have started with checking out the regulation proposal is drafted by the European Commission, where the main challenges have been identified and where the preliminary governance approach and governance structure has been met. So we took a look at what we could already work with, and then, like Evangelos has very nicely put it, we started asking a lot of questions. How can we improve it? Is this what really needs to happen? How do we go about it further? And so with these questions, we went to ask different stakeholders. We went to the universities, to the companies, to the government institutions in different countries. And then we asked the stakeholders, what do you guys want? And how can we help you to achieve it? And next to that, we went to do some research on the governance and to see what is optimal, what we can use. Unsurprisingly, the stakeholders expressed the needs that were aligned with the main challenges as identified in the regulation proposal. The stakeholders wanted cyber sovereignty, they wanted the EU control, they wanted independence. They also want some specific problems to be solved, like insufficient collaboration between academia and industry in the EU and the lack of focused investment. We took a look at the main governance approaches, such as network and hierarchical models. And the hierarchical model would be efficient, but also a bit too rigid and would not allow enough flexibility for us to move forward and to react quickly to the very rapidly changing field of cybersecurity governance. And the network model itself would not be structured enough, would ensure the mutual reliance we're looking for, but would not ensure speed and not necessarily efficiency, which aligned with what our stakeholders wanted us to do. And the stakeholders wanted us to use what was there. They were not to invent different extra structures. We were to use the existing community initiatives to lower the threshold for the communities, for different organizations to join together and solve the existing problems. So the key for our bottom-up governance approach would be to involve communities and to facilitate and ensure trust. With that, we took a red marker to the governance structure as identified in the regulation proposal, and based on it, we have made some adjustments and some improvements. In short, this is what we arrived at, and I realize it's a bit of a difficult slide to take in at once, so I will summarize the main findings in here. What we suggested, our key element, would be to establish a network of community hubs of expertise and cybersecurity knowledge. Check, or hub. The network of these checks would provide a suspicious environment for low level, community level research, information, capacity building, and then it would help to unite the forces of different stakeholders of different levels, suitable for solving different problems. And another important issue that the changes we have made would accommodate. You can see it here in the structure of stakeholder council. By awarding a number of seats to the community representatives, we would ensure the involvement of civil society in the decision making on the cybersecurity governance, which was a point that I think Rasmus brought up during the opening panel on Wednesday. So in short, this was our approach, and that brings me to another point, which was made during the opening panel by Despina, and she said we need to pool all our sources in order to solve the challenges that we have, and we already started doing it. You have of course been present, sort of, been listening to the other panels, to seeing a lot of other great examples of inter-pilot cooperation. So this is another one. What we have done in the last year is set up an inter-pilot governance coordination group. And we have achieved some results. We have identified a number of potential common points. And most we have identified the way we could in future cooperate on setting up this community in order to ensure that our tasks that we have to achieve as pilots, as a community of cybersecurity experts, will be solved successfully. To sum up, during the opening panel on Wednesday, Despina has brought up another important point. She asked, do we have, as Europe, what it takes to solve the existing issues? And I think this event, the Convergence event, and this particular governance panel will show that the answer is a resounding yes. If we work together, we definitely have what it takes to solve the problems. I thank you all for your attention. And now we'll proceed as follows. I will give the floor to my colleagues from different pilots. They will outline their approaches. You're welcome all to put your questions in chat, because the second part of the session will be to you, the audience, will be dedicated to your questions. Thank
you. Okay, thank you, Natalia. Dear colleagues, I hope you could hear me. I'm representing ECHO, and will shortly introduce what we are doing to identify the best governance model first for the network of our participants, but to offer to our colleagues and to answer the two questions where we want to be after 31st of January 2023, and where we want to arrive in 2027. Agenda is very simple, so I will not read it, but the focus is really to move from our project to the network as a whole. So the first is our mission of the working package 3 on governance model is really transformation of the assets, of the products of different working packages in our project in one network, ECHO network, that is a matrix organization consisting of several functional service groups, very similar to the checks that Natalia introduced, focusing on services, products, expertise in certain areas from this cybersecurity taxonomy. But on the other side, regional chapters, at least one for every member state, in order to be able to cooperate, to interface with national coordination centers to be established under the mentioned regulation in every member state. And we are looking for central hub that is doing strategic planning and coordinating activity of functional service groups and regional chapters, and at the same time is interfacing with the European Competence Center. So this is the key transformation effort, and because of that, we are developing such model for transformation that includes cooperation between academia, government, industry, and operators of digital services. And this is a model of transformation on at least two levels. First, on academia side, it is research to inform policy and development of a roadmap, defining the finances, the program for implementation, to really cover the requirements coming from operators, to feed the development work in industry. And on the second level, it is maintaining of cyber skills, the people that are the most important component, to support the process of acquisition of cybersecurity solutions in order to support the operation of different bodies. And of course, all this is based on effective production in European Union. So transformation in these four quadrants need to be supported by cyber competence community and effective governance model. So to achieve this, we developed, and it is something to be finalized beginning of next year, organizational and process design for the governance model. This is our target operating model that gives opportunity through the service portal and service catalog to provide a platform for partners to join and contribute in different areas of expertise, of service provision, to provide opportunity for customers, for users to have access to the services, to the capacity provided by the network, and in the center hub to be able to do strategic planning, partnership development, innovation management, and to interface with all other players in this ecosystem that is growing up in Europe. So all this is to be tested during the 5 demonstrations that are focused on the main assets for early warning, federation of cyber ranges, and developing certification schemes, cyber skills, and roadmaps for new technologies. So it is critical to have governance in mind in every demonstration. Here is how we see the development from what ECHO is working on to build the EXCON, European Cybersecurity Cooperation Network or Competence Network. And we see opportunity to really integrate the efforts of Cyber Atlas, mapping all available expertise in Europe with what will be developed by 4 pilot projects in preparing the ground for such really consolidated European cybersecurity cooperation network that is able on one side to interface with the institutional framework of European Competence Center and national coordination centers. On the other side, to work with the market where the real customers of the services, products, and knowledge in cybersecurity are situated, and of course to be able to cooperate with other critical players like NISA, EDA, Europol, and even cybersecurity organization of NATO when it comes to European interest. So we have 4 options beyond 2023. Do nothing. It means just to deliver what is in our grant agreement, and this will be the end of activity. to register joint ventures around the assets that we are planning to exploit in the area of early warning, cyber ranges, multi-sector analysis framework, education and training, certification. Third option is really to discuss, and it is an excellent opportunity, such type of conferences, future merge between what is achieved by 4Pilots and EXO in really consolidated European cybersecurity network, and based on white paper to form an environment that will be in support of optimal use of Horizon Europe and Digital Europe funding that will be available through European Center of Competence. Meanwhile, until this is under discussion with other pilots, we are working on development of our ECHO network as a non-governmental organization with chapters in every nation and central hub that will coordinate the activity of virtual organizations developing different services and point of contacts in every nation. So this will be kind of prototype of what we see as the future European cybersecurity community. So in order to achieve this, what we're working right now is the bylaw for such a non-governmental organization to decide where to situate our hub. As EU decided to situate the hub in Bucharest, we have to take our decision to start establishing chapters and service groups, chapters nation by nation, service groups based on the deliverables of different working packages that are developing certain services and capabilities. And of course, to start formalizing relations with all other stakeholders. And we see the focus group and this convergence conference as opportunity to establish these relations and to build on in the future. So this is all from my side. This is the team working on this, and we'll finalize our work practically next year, and we'll have about 2 years to implement, to assess, and to reach a level of maturity. But of course, we're open for collaboration with other pilots and to achieve something jointly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Velizar, for your interesting presentation. Now I give the floor to Artur. Let me summon your presentation. Artur, the floor is yours. Yes.
Good.
Don't see you.
Okay. Great. So good morning again, and Natalie, thank you for organizing this. Indeed, it was good that you set up the joint pilots communication. It's also good to see that the Commission has promoted the Cybersecurity Atlas earlier this week, which we have been working on as well. I think all pilots. It's actually even better that the Commission put this session on the website. So that's even better, of course. So regarding Concordia, we do not have a governance chapter by itself. Governance is, of course, part of a bigger scheme of things. It comes at a certain point, and I want to, let's say, move towards our thinking here, in where we think this becomes even more relevant than what we already are doing and what the state of play is. So in the middle part of this slide, which has a lot of words, I'm a lawyer by education and also by practice, so sorry about all the words. But this is just a copy-paste, the middle part of the staff working document impact assessment, and also what has been reconfirmed, as I mentioned, in the previous panel by the Council in June 2020. You can all read it, and you see that definitely cybersecurity is nicely cross-border, meaning that member states cannot monopolize this topic. or they should not monopolize it. Some are. This is not only for research or cyber or for national security, but also for economy, democracy, and society. So it's a pretty broad topic. And of course, I bring this up to, as I mentioned in the previous panel, to challenge ourselves to see whether we have everybody at the table already. And you can imagine that from my end, I don't think we are there yet. But that's also just as we always need to challenge ourselves. So the last part is, do we truly know already the ecosystem that we need to get this sorted? And the question is a continuous question. So that doesn't mean that we can't start right now. But we need, when we are thinking about governance, need to have a principle-based approach in order not to centralize or monopolize it again, which has been done by member states. And now with the European Union, with this middle part, we all agree that the why is, it doesn't stop at borders. It doesn't stop at the European Union borders, for that matter. And it's a global opportunity, it's a global challenge. So this is trying to come up with on a couple of principles that we need to take into account and try to organize this whole scheme, instead of trying to govern it in a too strict way, and then before we know it's already outdated. And that's not what I want to, of course, to convey. So to use a quite famous quote that we all know, I put something between brackets. It's not about knowing your enemy, even though it is, but actually not always like that. It's knowing yourself. And as this cybersecurity domain is constantly evolving and expanding, like our solar and our stellar systems, this is also how we need to look into it. It's relevant for every location, every sector, every vertical, every part of daily life. So the reason why I try to come up with this notion is to avoid again that member states or regions or even the EU think that it can monopolize this part only for instance, putting it in a national cybersecurity center or only having it dealt with by another institute. Because then we are missing out, and we have seen that already. If you look at the NIS directive, it's a directive, it's been implemented by every member state in a different way, and it sometimes differs 400% on the amount of sectors that are part of the NIS directive implementation in one country and the other. That means that it's very difficult to communicate and to interact, to share information, because one is not doing the sector, so why does it want to, inform that sector in that particular member state? So as I already showed in the previous panel, so I'll keep it short. This is coming out of the proposed regulation, so it's nothing new. I just put it in, some nice flashy color system, like it's a stellar system. It's not a solar system, it's a stellar system. There's no sun. The sun is, European sovereignty in the digital age, perhaps, and they're all planets and other elements that are, interdependent and dependent on each other. And this is what we, I think, also in the previous presentation we saw something like that also. But the point is that it's not something that can be monopolized by one institute, not by research, not by economic affairs, not by education, not by national security bodies. That is the challenge, but I think also where we can actually add value with the 4 pilots and with the European approach that JRC has with the Atlas and the European Commission, of course, as well. So just one part, just to confuse perhaps a bit more, but it's all about getting a mild level of confusion, not too high, but not too low. Just to give some examples, this is not I'm not saying this is full, this is everything, this is exhaustive, but it's pretty comprehensive to see how many different ecosystems are there, including number 7. I was not able to talk about that in the previous one. But don't forget about investors and financiers that are willing, either public or private, willing to invest in cybersecurity, both research, both implementation, both business, procurement, and vendor side, willing to invest, and of course want to see certain return. Doesn't need to be financial return, can be impact, can be data, can be all kind of different things. But this is one of those stakeholders that we should not forget. If we keep them out of the game, then they will not be able to tweak the game and help us win the game. So this is one of those things, and of course I can the other ones speak for themselves. I want to add one thing, or stress number 5. Malicious actors may not be the ones you want to have in your team, but you need to have the same mindset. And the very important mindset I want to stress here, because we are talking about in this convergence session about collaboration. If you don't know it yet, they work together, they collaborate, and we don't collaborate enough. So if we don't collaborate and they do, this is definitely a game we will not win. And that's not what I'm in for. I use team and game a lot because this is not a simple problem. This is a very challenging problem set. There's no technical fixture. It cannot be centralized. There can be centralized elements, but it needs to have a hybrid approach. Things need to be distributed, centralized sometimes, and decentralized. So it needs to be a combination of that. And that does not hinder that we already talk about what parts can we already start with without closing it, so that we can later on add other elements to it, other organizations or other ecosystems. So I call it an operating system, an organizational operating system, and that's what we love to help out with. So yeah, it's a team sport, so I hope we're all a part of the team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arthur. Thank you for just the right amount of confusion, but also for your reference to the basic values, the societal democratic values that we are here pursuing, all of us. Without further delay, I will give the floor to Thibaut. I'll give you your presentation. And now you're in control. Thibaut, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Natalia, and thank you for the introduction. So I'm going to give you a presentation from about the governance perspectives from Sparta with the following question: how can we strengthen the European cybersecurity capacities? Yeah, so before detailing what we are doing in Sparta, I would like to show this typology, which is taken from a paper from Breisnitz and al., which presents classification of innovation agencies along 2 different dimensions. The first dimension is the kind of innovation. It can be radical innovation or it can be incremental innovation. And the other dimension is the wideness of the objectives which are targeted. There can be 2 kinds of wideness, a narrow wideness and a more wide-ranging approach. In Sparta, we aim at being at enabling radical innovation with targeted objectives. However, in order to be sure that what is done in Sparta disseminate through more than Sparta, more than the cybersecurity community as well, we hope we also have initiatives to interact with the community. So now I'm going to give you a presentation about, I'm going to present you the different instruments we have in Sparta as a main instrument, I would say. We also have other activities which are not presented here, but those ones are the most relevant. And in particular, the roadmap instrument, the partnership instrument, and the technical programs in Sparta. So, what does the R&D lifecycle look like in Sparta? So we have a roadmap activity which is tasked to identify opportunities and de-risk those opportunities, gather challenges, and form large technical program candidates. Before starting Sparta, we have been able to build 4 such programs, which are today 4 programs running in parallel in Sparta. One program is about cybersecurity awareness. Another program is about how can we assess systems from a security perspective. The third program, IT, is about securing intelligent infrastructures. And we also have a program which is interested in secure and fair AI systems. The programs are executed and new technical results are produced. And I'm going to show you how we interact with the community to feedback the results from Sparta to the community. So here you can see the Sparta partnership, which interacts with the community through 2 kinds of partnerships. We have what we call an associate status and a friend status. The associate status is for organizations we want to interact closer with Sparta, and the friend status is more to be kept updated about what is going on in Sparta. So the Sparta roadmap collects ideas, needs, concrete practices from the community being composed of academics, industry, end users, grassroots security researchers. All these elements are shaped in order to create programs, and when results are obtained in programs, they are fed back to the roadmap in order to keep it updated, and they are also given back to the community through the Sparta partnership. All of this happens through a regular event. We have a monthly workshop in Sparta. So initially, before the pandemic, it was meant to be national workshops. So each month, a different country. Now with the pandemic, it goes a bit differently. And the Sparta roadmap instrument as well delivers an agenda for R&D&I activities in cybersecurity in order to help the community refine the strategy. Now that I showed you how it works and the main instruments, I would like to say a few words about the principles we are following in Sparta in order to make it work. So we adopt a philosophy of risk, meaning that in all programs, risks are closely monitored and decisions can be taken by risks. I can give an example. In one of the programs, T-Shark, there is an arbitrage group and a stage gate process which is followed during the execution of the technical program. Another aspect is that we consider diversity as an asset, and we acknowledge cultural differences, geographical differences, gender differences, and we do what we can to be as inclusive as possible. I can give an example of an action we have in Sparta, which is the Go Cyber with Sparta campaign, which aims at interacting with outermost regions of Europe, which face different challenges than the challenges we have in the mainland. We also promote an open leadership in Sparta, meaning that we give to the leaders of programs and activities large freedom in order to organize their activities. Each technical program in Sparta is free to have its own governing principle and organization. We also try not to work in silos and to leverage on horizontal possible mutualizations. It can be from a technical point of view. For instance, technical program leaders discuss about how they could mutualize technical elements. But they also share good practices and experience about how to organize and how to lead their programs. And finally, we try to keep in mind that digital platforms and the digital world, the cyberspace, is different from the physical space. And this is especially important if we want to keep up with the defending and promoting the fundamental values, including the human rights, for instance. So if you are interested in what happens in Sparta, I can refer you to two different deliveries. The first one is about how we bootstrapped the CCN pilot. And the second one is an assessment which has been done at the end of the first year of Sparta of the CCN pilot governance. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Thibaut, for presenting your vision, Sparta's vision. And I see that indeed the commitment to community involvement and to basic values and rights is still very much present. And so now we have only 9 minutes for Q&A. And again, everybody please submit your questions into the chat. But I will use my position as a moderator. I will take the first question because it's something I'm curious about. I was actually after the previous panel. It's something that has been touched upon already. And that was basically what is the first thing we need to do now that we have more clarity, now that we have the Cybersecurity Competence Center in Bucharest. So now I'm asking the same question, but in the context not of road mapping, but in the context of our different governance approaches. So what is the first thing that, according to you, should be done now? In terms of, according to your own governance approach, in terms of community organization, in terms of things that need to be set up. So we're going to be done today at 2 o'clock. First thing we're going to do on Friday evening.
Shall I go first?
Arthur?
Sure. So the perspective is clear. European digital sovereignty and competence centers and capability building. So I think the proposed regulation gives a quite clear framework for that. Not too much that needs to be changed there. The context is also in there because the intertwined four domains that I already mentioned are in as well. So that means that we have the right first two blocks, two dimensions to do proper stakeholder mapping and stakeholder plotting and mapping. Every stakeholder has different interests, multiple interests, and that's all fine. So that's the third one, the stakeholder plotting and mapping. The fourth one is a value-based approach. Every organization, institute will have different values. I think also we should not forget that in one member state, the similar institution doesn't have necessarily the same competences or already the same level of capabilities as the other. So it's not that we can already say, you know, horizontally everything is the same. So there we can see what are you missing out on, what can we help, what kind of package, what kind of knowledge, experience do you miss out on, and what can we learn from you, right? So I think one member state may be better at one competence and the other. Do we then want to have them both the same competence, or are we going to help each other? Those kind of questions I just want to pose. I have ideas, but it is of course also a little bit sensitive. So the number 4 is the value-based approach to come up with the right governance for that. So I would start with those 4 main steps towards joint success.
Thank you, Arthur. It's a very valuable point that before we proceed very decisively, we need to know very well what is there, and what our different needs and competencies are, how we can optimally fill up each other's lacunes in that. Who would like to be next? Velizar, go ahead.
Thank you, Natalia. I think that first of all we have to pursue our grant agreements and to deliver to European Commission what we agreed on and what we are paid for. But now when we have a little bit more clarity on institutional arrangement with European Competence Center and of course coming funding from Digital Europe and Horizon Europe, I think following actually your approach, we could address first on national level our authorities, and it will be good if we could do this again jointly. I mean, representatives of different pilot projects on national level to address national authorities and to be part of the process of notification of National Coordination Center. And this will help a lot because at the end of the day, nations, through their national priorities and notified center, coordination center, will shape the future of European Competence Center. So as a third step, I think it will be very good to be prepared with kind of a white paper on the governance of European cyber competence community that we could present jointly to European Competence Center and engage this center in kind of consultations on the priorities from our side about what and when to be funded through Digital Europe and Horizon Europe, simply because investing in our 4 projects, I think it is expected we to be ready through the roadmaps that were presented just a previous session. What is important, what is possible, where do we have capacity, and of course, final decision is for member states, is for nations. And last but not least, I think our governance arrangements have to be flexible enough to really facilitate forming of consortiums that will be successful in competing for the funding from these 2 programs, Digital Europe and Horizon Europe. At the same time, I think we have to find really on governance level the mechanism, so what is developed through our 4 projects to reach the real market as soon as possible. Of course, our partners will compete on this market, but it is our responsibility through the sound governance structure to really use this as additional instrument for funding of new developments that will strengthen our sovereignty and competitiveness as a union. So these are 4 or 5 steps I see in the governance area. Thank you.
Very much, Velizar, for your very clear vision. Thibault, do you have something to say quickly?
No, nothing very specific. I think Velizar gave a good view of the situation. Now, with the Digital Europe coming, we obviously need to think about we can move jointly and see how we could do the best for the future.
Thank you very much. I see there is a question coming in the chat from Mark. Looks like there are different bottom-up and top-down approaches. There are multiple options. Could there be a way to combine it? A concept which addresses both ways. In short, yes, there is a way, and this is what indeed, as Velizar has written, this is what we are working on in the Interpilot Governance Coordination Group, and we have identified a possible way how it's doable, and that could be, to say it very briefly, by means of introducing a matrix of different forms of cooperation. so that there is certain organizational flexibility and the space to accommodate multiple governance concepts. But sadly, we have only have 1 minute left, so we cannot tell about it in detail. And this white paper is an ongoing project, which hopefully we'll be able to share sooner rather than later, because as we have seen, the time is short. We have 1,000 battles to fight, and we have an army, but the army needs to be organized better. But I think it's safe to conclude that, as we have seen from this event and from the panels, that we do have an army, and we do have a goal, and we do have the vision on how to fight together. And now it's 12 o'clock. Our time is sadly up, but I hope to be able to organize more similar panels in the future, and to see you all, hopefully in person, and to answer more of the questions face to face. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, the panelists, and thank you, public, for joining us today.
Thank you, Nathalie.
Thank
Great
you.
job. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the focus group. Your presentations were excellent. The discussion was excellent. And again, looking forward to the white paper on governance, which I think is something which is quite important deliverable out of your focus group. So we're coming to the last session of the panel sessions.